Thank you for watching Amir Shakil 5858. I am Amir Budnam. I am thankful to all news resources which include American, British, European, African, Asian channels and all news agencies. Now the headlines. Russian presidential elections started, whereas Ukraine is attacking Russian territory. Differences in Israeli leadership regarding Gaza. Trump case in Florida. Vice President Harris in abortion clinic. Japan refuses gay rights. SpaceX rocket launch. President Biden is worried about Ukraine and Gaza situation. French President Macron talks. Black women in higher education. TikTok is hot topic in Canada. Contractor and mass killer in court. Judge under trial. Prince Harry landslide in California. Now the news in detail.
Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. In Gaza, at least 5 people were killed Wednesday when Israel bombed an UNRWA aid distribution center in Rafah, one of the UN agency's last remaining aid sites in Gaza. At least one UN worker was among the dead. UNRWA workers decried the attack.
This is forbidden. We are an international institution. All of this is for people. We stopped returning to our homes. We work day and night to serve refugees. It is forbidden. Look, what is this? We take all of this to the elderly and children. What is this?
The head of UNRWA, Philippe Lazzarini, said the attack was a, quote, blatant disregard to international humanitarian law, unquote. The attack comes as much of Gaza is on the brink of famine as Israel continues to limit the amount of aid allowed into the besieged territory. At least 27 Palestinians have died of starvation, including 23 children. Meanwhile, Al Jazeera is reporting 6 Palestinians were killed in Gaza City when Israeli forces opened fire again on crowds waiting for food aid. Over 80 people were injured. In other news from Gaza, Politico is reporting the Biden administration's privately told Israel the U.S. would support Israel attacking Rafah as long as it doesn't carry out a large-scale invasion. Israel's announced it wants to transfer most of the over 1.4 million people seeking refuge in Rafah to what it called humanitarian islands in other parts of Gaza. On Wednesday, one family in Rafah broke their Ramadan fast in the rubble of their destroyed home.
Last Ramadan was great, but this year it's not. A lot of things are not there anymore. My sisters, my family, our house got destroyed. There's still people under the rubble, and they're still not pulled out. This house was a children's dream. Their toys and everything is lost.
A new UN investigation has accused Israel of breaking international law over the killing of Reuters video journalist Issam Abdallah in Lebanon. On October 13th, an Israeli tank opened fire on Abdallah and a group of other journalists. The UN report stated, quote, the firing at civilians, in this instance clearly identifiable journalists, constitutes a violation of international law, unquote. Back in the U.S., hundreds of activists partially shut down the international terminal of San Francisco International Airport Wednesday to demand a permanent ceasefire in Gaza and that the U.S. stop arming Israel. Protesters blocked outside traffic and security check-in, forcing SFO to close certain checkpoints and roadways. One traveler stopped to thank the protesters for the disruption.
I am slightly inconvenienced, so my trip doesn't go exactly as planned, but I still have a life. I can still live. I'm not dying. I'm not starving. These people are starving.
Here in New York, activists successfully canceled a planned real estate event in Brooklyn this week that sought to sell homes built on illegal settlements in the occupied West Bank. This came just days after hundreds of activists in New Jersey marched through the streets of Teaneck Sunday to protest a similar real estate fair. It was taking place in a synagogue. Protests continue on Capitol Hill as well. On Tuesday, members of Jewish Voice for Peace occupied the office of Congressmember Hakeem Jeffries, calling on the Democratic leader to reject funding from AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. Jeffries is one of AIPAC's largest recipients. The action came as over 20 groups launched the Reject AIPAC coalition, established to counter the powerful lobby group's influence in D.C., and calling on elected officials to reject endorsements and contributions from AIPAC. The House overwhelmingly voted Wednesday in favor of a bill that would force TikTok's Chinese owner ByteDance to either sell the social media app or face a ban in the U.S. Backers of the bill claim TikTok poses a national security threat. Rights groups like the ACLU say such a ban would violate the right to free speech. There are well over 150 million TikTok users in the U.S. alone. After voting, 2 of the lawmakers who voted against the measure, Democrats Ro Khanna and Pramila Jayapal, laid out some of the bill's issues.
It's an overly broad bill that I don't think would stand First Amendment scrutiny. The other issue is that there are a lot of people who make their livelihoods on this.
There are timeline questions. 180 days to sell a company this size is very difficult. What happens to antitrust law? Does it still apply? Does it not apply? And I think the questions of if this is a de facto ban, I think that is a real problem. And so, but I also have problems, by the way, 4 countries are named, but if Saudi Arabia buys it, is that fine?
The measure will now be taken up by the Senate. Meanwhile, Palestinian rights activists say Israel's war on Gaza has galvanized anti-TikTok sentiment in conservative and centrist lawmakers. In a leaked post-October 7th audio recording, Jonathan Greenblatt, head of the Anti-Defamation League, can be heard saying, quote, we have a TikTok problem, unquote, referencing declining public support for Israel among younger people. The progressive group Roots Action also noted that AIPAC is the top donor to Congressmember Mike Gallagher, who authored the TikTok ban bill. This comes as Donald Trump flipped his position on the bill within the last week, now opposing the ban after recently meeting with Republican billionaire megadonor Jeff Yass. Yass's company holds a 15% stake in ByteDance. A plan to establish a new presidential council in Haiti appears to be crumbling after a number of prominent Haitian politicians and parties have refused to participate. Earlier this week, Caribbean leaders and the United States put forward a plan to establish a 7-person panel to rule Haiti and appoint a new prime minister to replace Ariel Henry, who agreed to resign after facing an armed uprising. In related news, the Biden administration is reportedly considering housing Haitian refugees at Guantanamo Bay if there's an influx of migrants. Meanwhile, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has deployed soldiers from the National Guard to block Haitians from reaching Florida. United Nations and aid groups are warning nearly 230,000 children and new mothers in Sudan could die from starvation in the coming months if their nutritional and health needs remain unmet. The humanitarian crisis in Sudan comes as rival military factions continue to fight despite calls for a Ramadan ceasefire. Earlier this week, the Sudanese military regained control of Sudan's national radio and television headquarters, which had been seized by the paramilitary rapid support forces. In Bolivia, non-stop rain in the capital La Paz prompted authorities to declare a state of emergency earlier this week as overflowing rivers destroyed homes and killed at least one person. Nearly 50 people have been killed due to flooding since the rainy season in Bolivia started in January. This isn't official from La Paz.
In nearly 80 years, we haven't seen such an event with these characteristics, and in this period, we have had too close to each other. Another unusual event was 9 days of continuing rain. There wasn't any minute during these 9 days that the city wasn't rainy.
In other climate news, the International Energy Agency warns methane emissions remain at highs. The agency said, quote, a 75% cut in methane emissions from fossil fuels by 2030 is imperative to stop the planet from warming to a dangerous level, unquote. The oil industry is the largest producer of methane, and the U.S. is the largest emitter of methane from oil and gas. Here in New York, activists with climate defiance confronted Chevron CEO Mike Wirth on Tuesday as he spoke at an event promoting, quote, the role of engaged men in gender inclusivity.
Is responsible for killing thousands of indigenous women and exposing thousands more to cancer and reproductive ailments. You are not an ally of women, you are a murderer.
Chevron CEO Mike Wirth was forced to leave the event. Federal investigators looked into the Alaska Airlines Boeing 737 MAX door blowout, say their work is being hampered by Boeing's lack of cooperation and major issues with its record keeping. The National Transportation Safety Board said Boeing was not able to provide the name of the employee who worked on the failed door plug and that Boeing overwrote surveillance footage of the plug's reinstallment. Meanwhile, the New York Times reports Boeing failed 33 out of 89 audits conducted by the Federal Aviation Administration on the 737 MAX. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals has upheld a Texas law that prevents young people from confidentially accessing birth control from clinics. The court ruled clinics can be required to notify and get consent from parents. Planned Parenthood criticized the ruling, saying it marks a, quote, significant and dangerous departure from decades of precedent that's allowed all young people to confidentially get basic health care like birth control through Title X, unquote. In other reproductive rights news, Vice President Kamala Harris is visiting an abortion clinic in Minnesota today in a show of support for abortion rights. It's the first such public appearance by any president or vice president in history. In Georgia, a judge tossed out 6 of the charges in the wide-ranging election subversion case against Donald Trump and some of his 18 co-defendants. Fulton County Superior Court Judge Scott McAfee said the charges, which relate to Trump pressuring officials into violating election laws, lack detail, but that prosecutors could seek a re-indictment on those counts. This comes as Judge McAfee is expected to announce his decision soon on whether to disqualify Fulton County District Attorney Fonnie Willis from the case over an alleged improper relationship with a special prosecutor. In Oklahoma, a medical examiner ruled non-binary teen Nex Benedict died of suicide. 16-year-old Nex Benedict's death last month came one day after they were attacked in a girl's bathroom by fellow students at Owasso High School. Benedict's autopsy showed a lethal mix of antihistamines and antidepressants in their system. Nex Benedict identified within the two-spirit, transgender, and gender nonconforming umbrella. And longtime LGBTQ+ activist and political advisor David Mixner has died at 77. A friend said the cause of death was complications of long-term COVID. David Mixner was famously close friends with Bill Clinton, whose presidential campaign he worked on, but the relationship fractured after Clinton walked back his promise to end discrimination against LGBTQ people in the military, which Mixner harshly condemned. He was arrested in a 1993 protest against Clinton's Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy outside the White House. This is David Mixner on Democracy Now! In 1996.
And we've got to get our act together. You know, the Christian Coalition's been organizing. They've been taking over school boards. They've been taking over water boards. They've been taking over taxation boards at the local level. And for years, I think on the progressive movement on the left, we have accepted the criteria that they're better than the other guy. And so we have always been put in that position of accepting someone just a little better than someone.
Welcome to Hannity, and tonight in just moments we will bring you an explosive new report surrounding Hunter Biden, China, and nuclear energy. John Solomon will join us with all these details. You're not going to get it from the media mob. But first, do you ever wonder why your President Joe Biden is not allowed to answer impromptu questions? A mystery. Many people want to know. Take a look.
Am I allowed to take any questions? Anybody here is that? I'm going to start the questions. I get in trouble. I'm sorry. This last question I'll take. I'm really going to get in trouble. I'm sorry. I'm going to get in trouble with staff. I don't do this the right way. I'm going to get in trouble with my staff. Yeah, go ahead. I pretended you didn't answer. You guys are bad. I'm not supposed to be answering all these questions. I'm supposed to leave. Thank you. And I'm happy to take questions if that's what I'm supposed to do, Nance. Whatever you want me to do.
Wow, White House staffers, campaign officials, and the First Lady, they all try their best to keep Joey away from the press and anyone else with a question. Anyway, even the Easter Bunny, you might recall, once shielded Joe from answering questions on the White House lawn. Well, today in Michigan, more of the same. At one stop, the press pool, they were confined to a tent that was 20 feet away. No one could really hear what the president was even saying. And of course, reporters, they were blocked from asking any questions. You might get in trouble. Take a look.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you. We're happy to want to people to this way. Thank you.
Joe, you're the president of the United States. You're not running for re-election, but you have to ask your staff if you can take a question. Seriously? Now, unless the reporter's name, as we know, and picture and pre-planned topic is written on a giant note card ahead of time, he may not get his ice cream and everyone's going to be mad at him and everything. It's not acceptable. Many in the press corps just don't really seem to care or even bother to ask why. I guess it's par for the course with Joe. Now, the answer is obvious. Joe's a cognitive wreck. Everybody knows it. So he's clearly not capable of performing the duties of his job. You know, he's obviously not jacked up Joe like he was at the State of the Union, screaming his speech to an entire country. And every day, when he's not jacked up Joe, he gets worse and worse. It's no secret that his vice president, by the way, could be called into action at any moment. And that would be a huge problem because almost nobody actually likes or trusts the vice president. Now, she has even worse poll numbers than Joe. That's even possible. In fact, according to one NBC News survey, Vice President Harris has the worst approval rating of any vice president ever. She has 0 accomplishments in office, and her role as board czar not exactly gone well, to put it lightly. But today, she did visit a high school softball team for some very awkward small talk. Take a look.
I'm so proud of you guys, and I just wanted to come by and say hello. You guys are the reason I do what I do, and I just love your competitive spirit. I love how you guys are just working at it. You are ready to be a team, and you're ready to compete, and that makes me so proud. So proud. How you guys do it?
Yes, we can. Anyway, while in Minnesota, Kamala Harris also stopped by an abortion clinic to celebrate the right to choose. Now, there once was a president named Bill Clinton. Remember him? He once said about abortion it should be It should be safe and legal. He should have added rare. Whatever happened to that Democratic Party? Now, by the way, now Democrats want abortion to be limitless and honored without any restrictions in the 9th month of pregnancy. And then in the case of, remember, Governor Northam from Virginia, even, well, first we'll deliver the baby, make the baby comfortable, and then the mother and doctor will talk about whether the baby lives. That's the exception for sure. But a lot of Democrats, when you ask them, what restrictions at all would you put on abortion? They won't answer that question. Here's an example. California Governor Gavin Newsom, our buddy. Do you support any restrictions at all on abortion, especially among 7, 8, and 9? Past viability.
I'm going to answer that question, but let's talk about the issue of abortion. Let's talk about the issue.
You can answer?
I'm going to answer that question. I'll repeat that. I trust, and answer your question, I trust the mother and her doctor to make that decision.
So in other words, I want to be clear on this. If a woman and her doctor, for any reason...
Not for any reason.
No. I'm asking.
Extremely rare.
Should there be...
I know where you guys are going, Sean. You're even uncomfortable with this whole issue. This is where you guys have to go to cover for the extreme anti-abortion agenda of Ron DeSantis.
Should there be... Would you support a ban on abortion in 7th, 8th, or 9th month if the mother's life is not in jeopardy?
Extreme exception. People aren't going on and having abortion.
Should it be illegal?
Something
Should it be illegal?
Should it be up to the mother and her doctor and her conscience? And
the answer is no restriction.
I've already answered it.
No restrictions. There's no moderation in this radical left-wing Democratic Party. Not on abortion, not on spending, not on taxes, not on illegal immigration, where it's really a bad thing to even say the word illegal. And by the way, not on COVID. We know that, God forbid, if you held a different view on the emergency authorization vaccine that's not been properly studied scientifically, follow the science. This is a party with radical and extreme positions on pretty much everything. So for many on the left, center, left even, the Democratic Party has totally abandoned them. They're now looking for new options come the fall, and I guess they will have other choices. Looks like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Naturally, the DNC is in panic mode over this. Is he going to bring back Jesse the Body Ventura? How great would that be? Anyway, don't expect them to moderate any of their policies. Now, instead, Biden's 2024 campaign will continue to focus on 4 issues. They will demagogue abortion. They will obsess over January 6th and democracy in peril. The same people that would allow one elected official to decide, I'm going to take that person's name off the ballot because I'm going to declare them guilty of insurrection, even though they haven't been charged or let alone convicted. And they'll keep key evidence out of January 6th. You know, like the fact that we now know, we played it last night, Trump offered the National Guard, and in the days leading up to January 6th, why didn't Liz Cheney in the January 6th committee, which with a predetermined outcome, why didn't they let us know that? Or exculpatory testimony that Donald Trump never tried to commandeer the presidential motorcade. We learned that from the driver of the presidential motorcade that they knew about, that they interviewed, that they didn't tell us about. The left flat out lied. They spread fear, hysteria, all things hate Trump 24/7. And of course, Democrats will call Republicans racist, sexist, xenophobic, homophobic, Islamophobic, transphobic, that want dirty air and water. In other words, Democrats are using fear and division to mask what has been a terrible 4 years under Biden. I repeat, they cannot run on are you better off than you were 4 years ago. This is all they have left. They don't really care about democracy or freedom or your rights as an American. No, they prefer one-party rule where Republicans are completely powerless and then, if they want to, punish them and use the Justice Department to go after them. This is the party of censorship and cancel culture, high taxation, record inflation, woke everything, and regulations galore. The party that defends supporters, riots, and crime, ignore that, and lawlessness. They support open borders, sanctuary cities, and states. This is the party that weaponized our Department of Justice and politicized it. The party that wants to abolish the U.S. Supreme Court as we know it and any other institution that dares get in their way or their agenda. So don't be fooled by the political smear tactics of the left in the next 235 days. However, you deserve better. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and
Tonight, the dangerous winter storm slamming several states. Parts of I-70 in Denver shut down for a time. The accidents, the images coming in. The major headline tonight from the Florida judge in the Donald Trump classified documents case. And breaking news right now in New York City. Word of horrific shooting in a subway station. First tonight, tracking this major winter storm at this hour with a foot of snow around Denver. I-70, the accidents, the shutdowns. Some cars have stranded for 17 hours. Severe storms now from Texas up to Ohio. Tornado watches up right now across multiple states going into the night. And what's coming to the Northeast tomorrow? Ginger Z timing this out. There's also breaking news. The jury right now deliberating the fate of the father charged in his son's deadly school shooting. What we learned just a short time ago. News on Donald Trump tonight and that word just in from the Florida judge in the classified documents case. What she said about one of his motions to dismiss and what she signaled in court today about the case overall. The breaking news here in New York City. The images coming in after that shooting at a subway station. Authorities say a man shot in the head in critical condition at this hour. Subway riders ducking for cover just days after the National Guard was sent into the subway. With Roe versus Wade overturned in this country tonight, Vice President Kamala Harris, the first vice president to ever visit a Planned Parenthood that provides abortions, telling voters women's reproductive rights, abortion rights are on the ballot this presidential election. And tonight here, what's happened even in conservative states when the issue of abortion has been put on the ballot. Tonight here, the rare and stunning rebuke of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Here in the U.S., Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, the highest-ranking Jewish official in the U.S. government, declaring there should be elections in Israel. SpaceX and the launch of its Starship rocket crossing several major hurdles today, but then burning up on its way back to Earth. And the bigger question tonight, how soon do they plan on putting astronauts on that rocket to the moon? In upstate New York tonight, the FedEx tractor trailer sideswiping a car with a family and baby inside, then off the bridge dangling. Multiple people hurt. And America Strong tonight, the dog they thought was gone, but a hiker discovered 1,000 feet up the mountain. From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with David Muir. Good evening, it's great to have you with us here on a Thursday night. We do begin tonight with the dangerous winter storm. Multiple states, the Denver area slammed tonight. Dangerous driving, hundreds of flights canceled at the Denver airport alone. Schools closed, 100,000 customers without power tonight. They could see up to a foot of additional snow this evening. And now a tornado watch from Texas right up to Ohio with the system before it heads into the Northeast next. Look at the images tonight from I-70 near Denver. Dozens of cars and trucks stuck in heavy snow. This is Evergreen, Colorado. Some cars stranded for 17 hours. Plows trying to clear the interstate today. Up to 3 feet of snow and near hurricane-strength winds in the mountains. Multiple ski areas shut down tonight. And this is the scene at the Denver airport where I mentioned hundreds of flights canceled and delayed from this. And now the real tornado concerns across several states as we head into the night. ABC's Mola Lengi leading us off from Denver tonight.
Tonight, vehicles sliding, stalling, and stranded from a massive weather system dumping feet of late-season snow in the Rockies.
This is a sight we've been seeing all day. Drivers spinning out, getting stuck, needing help from Colorado Department of Transportation. Folks getting towed out, getting pushed, whatever it takes. Roads out here are treacherous and will only get worse before they get better.
Outside Denver, multiple stretches of Interstate 70 shut down, the crucial highway turning into a travel nightmare. Tractor trailers spinning their wheels, drivers getting out to push their cars. Charlie Stubblefield and his team from Mountain Recovery trying to clear the interstate.
We are stuck with 3 feet of snow probably. Look at the top of that semi right now. Vehicles that have been stranded out here for a good 17 hours.
It's right there.
Meanwhile, in the heartland, a severe weather outbreak is unfolding, with 35 million Americans under threat from Texas to Ohio. A suspected tornado touching down in Milton, Kentucky this afternoon. 2 people were hurt.
We have multiple trees down, probably 50 to 100 houses that have some kind of damage.
AccuWeather storm chasers catching this massive twister as it tore across farmland west of Topeka, Kansas overnight. Those storms dumping up to softball-sized hail.
The winter storm watch continues at least into Friday morning. Of course, it's still snowing. As you can see by this down tree, there's still a lot to clean up. And even once it stops snowing, travel and the roads are expected to remain dicey throughout the Denver metro area, David. Right through tomorrow morning. Mola Lengi leading us off tonight. Mola, thank you. Let's get right to Chief Meteorologist Ginger Z timing all of this out. Of course, it's not just the snow, Ginger. It's this tornado threat now going into the evening hours.
9 states, David, have tornado watches at this moment. So from Toledo back to Texarkana, you've got a tornado watch. And then just a moment ago, Dallas got put in a severe thunderstorm watch. Those go till midnight or even after. We know that nocturnal tornadoes can be even more dangerous because you've got to have 2 ways of warning that'll wake you up. So looking at that, we take it through 4 a.m. The severe storms go all the way through Mississippi, Alabama, and far northern Louisiana. We're going to watch now this cold side of the storm because there's an additional 6 to 12 inches on top of what Mola just showed you. In the northeast here, we'll be breaking up this record warmth with some showers, David.
Ginger Z with us here tonight, Ginger. Thank you. We'll see you tomorrow morning on GMA. There is breaking news at this hour in the trial of the Michigan father charged in his son's deadly school attack. The jury has now reached a verdict. Trevor Roll with the breaking developments.
Tonight, a Michigan jury finding James Crumbley guilty of 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter.
Guilty of involuntary manslaughter.
1 for each of the students his son murdered at Oxford High School in 2021. Last month, his wife Jennifer convicted on the same charges the first parent held criminally responsible in their child's school shooting. In James's trial, prosecutors allege he was negligent, ignoring signs of his son's deteriorating mental health and buying him the gun used in the shooting.
James Crumbley was presented with the easiest, most glaring opportunities to prevent the deaths of these 4 students, and he did nothing.
Hours before the shooting, James and his wife met with their son's counselor over concerning drawings, but they declined to take their son home from school. James did not take the stand in his own defense, but his wife testified during her trial that it was her husband's responsibility to keep the family gun secure.
It was more his thing, so I let him handle that.
The defense argues James had no way of knowing what his son was planning.
James Crumbley had no idea what his son was capable of.
David, involuntary manslaughter carries a maximum sentence of 15 years in prison. Jennifer Crumbley's sentencing is already scheduled to get set for next month.
David, Trevor Roll on this case again tonight. Trevor, thank you. We turn now to the breaking news from Florida. Late today, the federal judge ruling on one of Donald Trump's motions to dismiss the classified documents case against him there, ruling she would not dismiss. And what she said in court about the case overall. Here's our senior investigative correspondent, Eric Petersky now.
Donald Trump arriving at a Florida court. His lawyers trying to convince a federal judge the special counsel's case over his handling of classified documents should be dismissed. Trump's team arguing the charges were unconstitutionally vague. But Judge Aileen Cannon, who Trump appointed to the bench, ruling tonight she will not dismiss the case on those grounds. She's still considering another motion to dismiss, but after a full day of arguments, Cannon strongly signaling she is inclined to let the case move forward, saying your arguments might have some force, but it's difficult to see how this leads to a dismissal of the indictment.
Are you prepared to go to trial on March 25th?
A ruling coming just hours after a surprise announcement in New York. The Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg proposing a 1-month delay in the start of Trump's hush money trial. Trump's accused of trying to conceal payments to adult film star Stormy Daniels. The first of the former president's criminal trials was supposed to get underway less than 2 weeks from now. Prosecutors said they just got their hands on tens of thousands of pages and documents from the Justice Department, and they want to give Trump's legal team up to 30 days to review them. Prosecutors noting there will be another production of documents by next week. Trump has pleaded not guilty. His legal team demanding months to go over the new records, which would delay the trial even more.
So to be clear on all of this now, Aaron Petersky with us live. Aaron, so in Florida, Judge Cannon strongly signaling that this documents case will move forward. In New York City, this hush money trial likely pushed back at least a month. And then tomorrow, we're expecting a major decision in the Georgia election interference case. A judge there set to decide whether DA Fani Willis will stay on this case.
He is going to decide that as soon as tomorrow, David. The judge is deciding whether Fani Willis's relationship with another member of the prosecution team posed a financial conflict of interest. Whatever way that ruling goes, it is almost certain one side or the other will try to appeal it, potentially delaying that case too. David,
we'll wait for late word on that tomorrow from you, Aaron. Thank you. Meantime, there is breaking news here in New York City tonight. A horrific shooting at a subway station. Authorities say a man was shot in the head and is in critical condition at this hour. Subway riders seen ducking for cover, and of course, this all comes just days after the National Guard was sent into the subway by New York Governor Kathy Hochul. Let's get right to ABC's Ariel Resheff with late reporting. Ariel, what do we know so far?
Well, David, we want to take you straight to some harrowing video that is coming into our newsroom. You can see subway riders ducking for cover and screaming in horror moments after a man was shot in the head inside that station in downtown Brooklyn shortly before 5 p.m., just as that rush hour is beginning tonight. The victim seen here on a stretcher rushed to the hospital in critical condition. Police sources say that a suspect is in custody and a weapon has been recovered. But as you mentioned, David, this comes just days after Governor Hochul sent the National Guard into stations across this city amid a 13% spike in subway crime so far this year. David?
Ariel Resheff tonight. Ariel, thank you. We turn now to the race for president, and tonight, Vice President Kamala Harris, the first vice president to ever visit a Planned Parenthood that provides abortions, telling voters women's reproductive rights, abortion rights are on the ballot this presidential election. And tonight here, what's happened even in conservative states when the issue of abortion has been put on the ballot after Roe went down. Here's ABC's Rachel Scott tonight.
Tonight, Kamala Harris making history as the first vice president to visit a women's health clinic where abortions are provided, a sign of just how central this issue has become to the Biden campaign.
And walking through this clinic, that's what I saw. Are people who have dedicated their lives to the profession of providing health care in a safe place that gives people dignity. And I think we should all want that for each other.
21 states have banned or restricted access to abortion since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade.
How dare these elected leaders believe they are in a better position to tell women what they need, to tell women what is in their best interest. We have to be a nation that trusts women.
Democrats keenly aware voters have moved to protect abortion rights in all 6 states where it has appeared on the ballot since Roe v. Wade was overturned, including conservative states like Kansas, Kentucky, and Ohio. In his State of the Union speech, President Biden noting that in the Supreme Court's decision overturning Roe, the justices themselves wrote, women are not without political power.
You're about to realize just how much he's right.
The president is counting on abortion to drive voters to the polls this November. As many as 14 states could have measures related to abortion or reproductive rights on the ballot, among them Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Arizona, battleground states that could decide this election. As the nation's first female vice president, Harris has been the leading voice on reproductive rights for the Biden administration. David, she's been going state to state hoping to rally Democratic voters around this issue. David?
All right, Rachel Scott covering the race for president tonight. Rachel, thank you. We turn next to Israel and to a rare and stunning rebuke of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu right here in the U.S. And it came from the highest-ranking Jewish official in the U.S. government, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, suggesting elections be held in Israel and saying Netanyahu is an obstacle to peace. Matt Gutman from Israel tonight.
Tonight, that stunning rebuke from Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer calling for Israel to hold new elections because he believes Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is an obstacle to peace.
As a lifelong supporter of Israel, it has become clear to me The Netanyahu coalition no longer fits the needs of Israel after October 7th.
In a 40-minute speech, Schumer, the highest-ranking Jewish official in the U.S., saying Israel has lost its way and demanded it do more to protect civilians in Gaza. Netanyahu's the Likud party criticizing the speech, saying Israel's not a banana republic whose leader can be swapped out. The ramped-up rhetoric comes as the IDF prepares to launch a major military operation in the southern Gaza city of Rafah. The Israeli military now says it'll evacuate 1.4 million displaced people there before it attacks. But with Gazans facing famine, the White House and Democrats under increasing pressure for a ceasefire and for increased aid into Gaza. Today, at a border crossing not far from Rafah, we spoke to the Israeli commander responsible for allowing aid into Gaza, Israel blaming the UN for failing to distribute aid.
Specifically, are you saying that there's no hunger or that there's no starvation in the north of Gaza? I'm saying the UN is about to declare a famine. I'm saying that there's no starvation. There are challenges of accessibility also.
David, here in Israel, Senator Schumer's remarks cheered by some, including the head of Israel's opposition. But despite the fact that Netanyahu is deeply unpopular in Israel, even some of his staunchest opponents said it should be only Israeli citizens who decide the prime minister. David,
making global headlines tonight. Back up and thank you. Back here in the U.S. and spectacular images tonight. SpaceX and the launch of its Starship rocket today, the most powerful rocket ever built, crossing several major hurdles, but then burning up on its way back to Earth. Tonight, SpaceX and NASA saying that much was learned today, but the bigger question remains: how soon do they plan on putting astronauts on one of these rockets to the moon? Here's Maria Villarreal tonight.
Lifting off from the coast of South Texas today, SpaceX launching its third test flight of Starship, the biggest and most powerful rocket ever built.
We are feeling the rumble.
The spacecraft NASA hopes will one day help bring astronauts back to the moon.
And passing supersonics, so we're now moving faster than the speed of sound.
Starship traveling farther in space than ever before, almost halfway around the Earth.
Oh man, I need a moment to pick my jaw up from the floor because these views are just stunning.
SpaceX expected Starship would survive re-entry to the atmosphere, but break apart when it hit the ocean.
The heat shield tiles doing their work up to 2,600 degrees Fahrenheit, but those heat shield tiles are dissipating.
Instead, the spacecraft lost contact and burned up on its way back to Earth. David, the FAA will now investigate what worked here and what didn't, but SpaceX is already building 4 new Starships they are hoping to launch by the end of the year with the stretch goal of getting astronauts back to the moon as early as 2026. David?
Maria Villarreal tonight. Maria, thank you. When we come back here, the frightening accident in upstate New York, the FedEx tractor trailer sideswiping the car with several people and a baby inside, the truck then tumbling off the thruway bridge. The images here in a moment. And then Prince William tonight, and what he said about Princess Catherine today. Tonight, the frightening accident in upstate New York, a FedEx truck sideswiping the car with several people, including a baby inside. The truck then dangling from a New York State thruway bridge in Pittsford, outside Rochester. 5 people, including the baby, all treated for injuries. Everyone is expected to be okay. When we come back here tonight, Prince William's public appearance today, what he said about Princess Catherine. And here in the U.S., they thought their dog was gone, and what a runner found 1,000 feet up the mountain. To the next tonight, Prince William appearing at a children's charity event in West London amid growing concern about Princess Catherine not making an appearance in weeks herself. William playing with children, decorating cookies, and telling the kids today, my wife is the arty one. The reference to Catherine comes just days after Princess Catherine apologized for editing an image of her and their children, only increasing questions about her condition following that abdominal surgery in January. When we come back here tonight, America Strong, the pet dog they thought lost forever, and then the discovery 1,000 feet up the mountain. You have to see this. Funny tonight here, America Strong, the physical therapist and runner, headed up the mountain, documenting his run, when he suddenly saw something else. Tonight, outside Honolulu, the incredible rescue. Physical therapist and marathon runner Sergio Florian was training on a mountain on Oahu's east side, recording and sharing his training runs, when all of a sudden, he saw this. A lost dog, shaking and dehydrated, curled up near the edge of a 1,000-foot cliff.
Oh, you okay, bro? No.
That runner did not hesitate. Realizing the dog was too weak to make it down that mountain, he picked her up, all 45 pounds of her, and slowly and carefully carried her down that steep, rocky trail.
I don't know whose girl this is, but we gotta find out. I'm just taking a rest in between. I'm gonna take her down.
Eventually making it back to his home, giving her much-needed water, feeding her, and getting word out that he had found the dog. Eventually finding the owner who had lost her on a walk. And right here tonight,
aloha, David. Welcome to beautiful Hawaii.
That runner and rescuer, Sergio.
As you can see behind me, that's exactly where it was. I got her trust first and started to pet her, and she let me hold on to her, and that's when I knew that I could save her.
He says his knowledge as a physical therapist, his endurance as a marathon runner, all helped him get that dog down to safety.
I just did what anyone would have done if they could. I'm just grateful that I was able to help her.
Tonight, the dog, whose name is Stevie, home and on the mend, and her owner, grateful.
Anytime you're in a position where you're able-bodied and you're in a good place and you can help someone, you should lend a hand.
We all think of our dogs when we see that one. Thank you, Sergio, and we're glad Stevie's home. Good night.
Thank you for making world news tonight with David Moore, America's most.
Breaking news tonight, the federal judge denying Donald Trump's motion to dismiss his classified documents case. The former president back in a Florida courtroom today for another showdown with special counsel Jack Smith. But the judge denying Mr. Trump's bid to throw out the charges over the documents the FBI seized from Mar-a-Lago. And in New York, word that Mr. Trump's hush money trial could be delayed. But by how long? Also tonight, the massive tornadoes in the Midwest. Millions under severe threat from Texas to Ohio. Plus the major winter storm slamming the West. Up to 4 feet of snow in Colorado. After 5 months of war in Gaza, some of the sharpest criticism yet from a top U.S. official. Senator Chuck Schumer urging Israel to hold new elections and oust Benjamin Netanyahu. Americans stranded as chaos grips Haiti. Put the U.S. house migrants fleeing the violence at Guantanamo Bay. The all-out search for a missing 22-year-old college student. The last known videos of him was he overserved alcohol before disappearing. His family speaking out to us. The biggest rocket ever built, successfully launched by SpaceX, but breaking up during re-entry. Now the FAA investigating. And meet the new class of astronauts training to take America back to the moon.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good evening and welcome. There are big developments in the criminal cases faced by former President Donald Trump. The first related to the federal classified documents case. A judge late today denying Mr. Trump's request that the case be dropped on grounds of unconstitutional vagueness. It was the first of 2 motions argued by the former president's lawyers during a day-long hearing in Florida with Mr. Trump in attendance. Meantime, 1,200 miles away in New York, what is supposed to be Mr. Trump's first criminal trial, slated to start later this month, may be delayed. The Manhattan DA's office telling the judge in that case it would not oppose an adjournment of its hush money case not to exceed 30 days. Mr. Trump's legal team had asked for a 90-day delay. The DA says it wants to give the defense time to review thousands of newly provided documents. That trial currently scheduled to start on March 25th with jury selection. Laura Jarrett has more on today's legal split screen.
Tonight, in a new legal blow, a federal judge denying former President Trump's request to toss out criminal charges alleging he hoarded classified documents at Mar-a-Lago. The presumptive GOP nominee is seen arriving this morning, greeting supporters gathered outside the Florida courthouse. His attorneys arguing the law on national security secrets is too vague, and that Mr. Trump believed he was allowed to keep the documents as his personal records, according to the Presidential Records Act, saying last night,
I took them very legally, and I wasn't hiding them.
But federal judge Aileen Cannon, a Trump appointee, tonight writing a dismissal over vagueness now would be, quote, premature, and earlier at the hearing, appearing skeptical of any argument to toss the charges based on the Presidential Records Act, telling Mr. Trump's team it's difficult to see how this gets you to the dismissal of an indictment. No decision yet on a trial date. Mr. Trump's team urging her to push it until after the November election. That ruling coming after a surprising setback for Manhattan's prosecutors just 11 days before Mr. Trump's hush money trial was set to begin. Tonight, the district attorney's office saying they do not oppose waiting 30 days to start the trial in an abundance of caution. The case where prosecutors have accused the former president of bearing a hush money payment to a porn star ahead of the 2016 election, now marred in a fight over a significant number of documents related to Michael Cohen, the man who made the payment. Records Mr. Trump's attorneys say they need to prepare their defense. According to a new court filing, tens of thousands of pages of documents were only recently turned over to Mr. Trump's team. A Trump spokesman responding tonight, this case has no basis in law or fact.
So, Laura, when might we hear the date for the trial here in New York?
Well, the judge can rule any time now, Lester. As you mentioned, Mr. Trump's defense team said they need at least 90 days to delay here given the number of documents, but the judge could do something shorter than that, or he could decide he wants to hear from both sides before ruling.
All right, Laura, thanks very much. Tonight's other top story, severe weather ripping across much of the country, from tornadoes touching down in several states late today to that massive snowstorm in the Mountain West. Dana Griffin has the latest.
That is insane.
Tonight, a tornado touching down in Indiana. Several homes destroyed, trees leveled, and power out in the area.
The whole house that's blown over there. The entire house is brand new. They just moved in.
Remarkably, no reported deaths. And in Kansas,
We got tornado on the ground.
another twister. In Missouri, golf ball size hail. Meanwhile, the biggest snowstorm to hit Colorado in 3 years arrived overnight, dumping 2 to 3 inches per hour, leaving drivers stranded and parts of I-70 closed. And early and often, that's the strategy for some residents trying to shovel their way through this continuous snowfall.
I think maybe I hit 2 more times.
Today,
Probably.
heavy, way down snow, concerning for neighbors like Mary Ison, trying to clear snow from her prized cherry tree.
It's very stiff. There's a lot of water.
More than 31,000 customers without power, and most schools took a snow day. At Denver International, more than 800 flights canceled.
I was supposed to be flying back home to Kansas City, and unfortunately they got canceled.
A bus carrying 60 women on a ski trip from Denver getting stuck for more than 15 hours on I-70.
We got on the bus yesterday at 3:30.
Some women stuck without their medicine.
We have someone with diabetes. We have someone who got injured on the hill.
By Thursday afternoon, the group finally back on the road and proving their resilience.
We kind of know how to handle things when they're tough.
And there's hope. This March snow madness comes to an end Friday.
Dana, it's been snowing for more than 24 hours in some areas, so how much more is expected tonight?
Yeah, there's still 12 hours left of this storm. What you see on the ground will likely double by tomorrow. It's going to be another long night for crews, hoping that tree limbs like this don't come crashing down. Lester?
All right, Dana, thank you. In Washington, top Senate Democrat Chuck Schumer with some stinging criticism of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, calling for new elections there, a rare rebuke of the elected leader of a key U.S. ally. Garrett Hake now with late details.
As Israel targets Hamas in Gaza and the humanitarian crisis grows, the top Senate Democrat delivering a scathing rebuke of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, saying he needs to be replaced in new elections.
Prime Minister Netanyahu has lost his way by allowing his political survival to take the precedence over the best interests of Israel.
Schumer, the highest-ranking Jewish elected official in American history, laying blame for the war at the feet of Hamas, but saying Netanyahu is an obstacle to peace.
He has been too willing to tolerate the civilian toll in Gaza, which is pushing support for Israel worldwide to historic lows. Israel cannot survive if it becomes a pariah.
Republican leaders slamming the criticism of Netanyahu, who is also known as Bibi, the democratically elected leader of a close U.S. ally.
The Democratic Party doesn't have an anti-Bibi problem. It has an anti-Israel problem.
It's just plain wrong. For an American leader to play such a divisive role in Israeli politics while our closest ally in the region is in an existential battle for its very survival.
Netanyahu has not responded to Schumer's comments. Meanwhile, President Biden has criticized Israel's military operations as over the top and privately complained of Netanyahu, quote, giving him hell, sources told NBC News last month. Lester?
Garrett Hake, thank you. Now to the increasingly desperate situation in Haiti, where hundreds of Americans are among those struggling to get out as the violence and chaos grows. Gabe Gutierrez is following it all from the neighboring Dominican Republic.
Tonight, a catastrophe is unfolding in Haiti. Each day, people running for their lives. The gang violence in Port-au-Prince now trapping Americans caught in the crossfire. Hundreds of stranded U.S. citizens registering with the State Department.
We just want to go home.
Missionary Jill Dolan and her family are stuck in a makeshift motel near the country's shuttered main airport. She's desperate to get back to Florida in time for her daughter's wedding. Instead, she's ducking for cover.
We did hear gunfire like right outside at this gate, and it was very scary. And we all went running, and we turned off the lights and just like hid in our room until it went away.
Amid concerns of a mass exodus from Haiti, the Dominican Republic is increasing patrols along its border, and the U.S. is considering temporarily housing Haitian migrants at Guantanamo Bay like it's done before. Today, in the Dominican border town of Dajabon, Haitians were briefly allowed to cross into this closed-off market. But if they went too far illegally, we saw bus after bus deporting them. This widow, mother of 6, told us she was desperate for food. We don't have work, we don't have a president, we have nothing, she says. The UN just announcing that it's launching an air bridge, essentially a humanitarian corridor in the sky, to bring over humanitarian aid from the Dominican Republic across the border into Haiti. We also met Juan Jambier, who says he's from Miami, but as he recently visited family in Haiti, a gang overtook his bus, leaving him with no passport and no way out.
They took all my stuff, my documents, my bags, my phones, my money that I had in my pocket.
Tonight, this is the edge of chaos, a humanitarian crisis at yet another border.
And Gabe, it's important to note that violence is just one of the reasons so many Haitians are trying to get out.
Yeah, that's right, Lester. We're just a few steps from the Haitian border, and so many people came here today in stifling temperatures for whatever little food they could get. It is not just the violence. The UN also estimates that nearly 1 million people inside Haiti are on the brink of famine. Lester?
All right, Gabe, thank you. We're going to take a turn overseas now to the tensions with China. Tonight we have rare access inside joint military drills as the U.S. and Japan make a major show of force in the region. Here's Janice Mackey-Frayer.
Here on Okinawa, amphibious carriers are landing on a beach to simulate a raid to take back an island.
These are American vehicles rolling off a Japanese hovercraft.
Japan and the U.S. expanding joint military drills to hone close coordination between forces.
These drills happen fast. They're already heading back out to sea.
And for the first
first time, the exercise called Iron Fist said to name China as the hypothetical enemy, though the threat is real, says the U.S. ambassador to Japan, Rahm Emanuel.
What is it that China is doing that is creating this potential for conflict?
Well, they're in conflict with everybody. There's no country in the region. They're not in some kind of small, very small kinetic problem with an untethered, unanchored China. It is destabilizing China.
With Japan facing its gravest security threat in decades, spending billions on American stealth fighter jets and cruise missiles to defend against China, but also Russia and North Korea. A key part of Japan's strategy involves fortifying an island chain with missile systems and a new military base that U.S. aircraft would use too, creating a wall centered around Taiwan, limiting China's access to the Western Pacific. China's claims over most of the disputed South China Sea are causing friction, with close encounters involving Chinese ships and aircraft, the U.S. transforming its presence too.
We're the permanent Pacific power. You can bet long on America.
For years, these drills were held in the U.S. and last year moved here, as deterrence and a message that Japan is readying to fight. Janice Mackey Ferrer, NBC News, Okinawa.
In 60 seconds, the search intensifies for a missing college student in Nashville, seen on surveillance but never returning to his hotel. The mystery after this. We're back now with the urgent search for a college student missing for nearly a week in Nashville. Tonight, his family is speaking out to us as authorities investigate whether he was overserved alcohol before he vanished. Here's Kathy Park.
The search for 22-year-old Riley Strain intensifying in Nashville. Crews using sonar equipment in the Cumberland River.
It's just, we gotta find him.
The University of Missouri student disappeared last Friday night after his family says he left by himself from a downtown bar owned by country music star Luke Bryan. Do you know why he was asked to leave the bar?
He was trying to pay his tab, but he didn't have a tab. And the bartender was like, you've been overserved. You gotta go.
Surveillance video revealing some of the last moments Riley was seen. One video appears to show him stumbling, even falling.
It's hard to see no one help.
Investigators say right now, no foul play is suspected.
This is strictly missing person investigation at this point.
His parents say Riley stands out. He's 6'7", adding he was visiting Nashville with his fraternity brothers.
I think the last text was around 7:45, and I just said I love you, and he said I love you too.
The family says Riley told his friends he would be back to their hotel, but when his friends arrived, Riley wasn't there, and they couldn't reach him on his cell phone. Police say this 911 call was made the day after Riley was last seen.
Today, take a warning to report is missing. We're here on a fraternity formal trip. It's one of my good buddies.
Riley's family now on a mission to bring him back home. The operator and owner of Luke Bryan's bar says they will work closely with police. Meanwhile, Tennessee authorities have launched investigations whether Riley was overserved alcohol. They did not say which establishments were under review. Lester?
Kathy Park in Nashville, thanks. Coming up, trying to stay ahead of a growing outbreak of measles. Chicago vaccinating hundreds with at least 10 cases reported there. Back now with the latest on the country's growing measles outbreak, with cases this year so far in 17 states. Tonight, the focus is on Chicago, with at least 10 measles cases, most of them tied to a single migrant shelter. Jesse Kirsch is there.
Tonight, Chicago officials trying to keep up with an outbreak of measles hitting multiple communities, including at least 2 public schools. Overall, the city reporting 12 cases in just 1 week. 10 of those infections connected to this specific city migrant shelter.
At this point, would you say the situation is under control?
Well, measles is quite contagious, and it spreads among those who are not vaccinated. So we are trying to get it under control by vaccinating as many people as possible.
Chicago's Commissioner of Public Health says the city has vaccinated more than 900 shelter residents, but that was after the outbreak began, and immunization takes time.
It takes 21 days for the vaccines to become effective.
This woman is staying at the shelter with her 2 young children. She agreed to speak with us if we concealed her identity. The conditions are awful, she told us. There's more than 300 people in one area. They're all crammed together. The city says it's trying to create more space, moving families with vulnerable pregnant women and children less than a year old to hotel rooms. Nationwide, the CDC reports at least 45 measles cases combined across 17 states so far this year. But Chicago's outbreak underscores that new migrant arrivals can mean new public health challenges. Many here come from Venezuela, which has a low measles vaccination rate. Chicago's mayor says don't blame the migrants.
They didn't bring illness. In fact, migrants are more vulnerable to the existing infectious diseases that we already have here.
Chicago says it's also now offering vaccines right here at the city's landing zone when migrants get off buses to help protect against the potentially deadly measles virus. Lester?
Jesse Kirsch, thanks. There is late-breaking news in the trial of James Crumbley facing charges after his son killed 4 students in a school shooting. Let's get right to Adrian Broaddus. Adrian.
Lester, it took that Michigan jury more than 8.5 hours to find James Crumbley guilty on all 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter. As that verdict was read, James Crumbley shook his head. Members of the jury deliberating more than 8.5 hours. Prosecutors argued that James Crumbley could have prevented the shooting that led to the deaths of those 4 students. The defense said their client had no knowledge. Family members relieved tonight. Lester?
Adrian, thank you. And up next for us, today's critical test in the new space race. Finally, the FAA says it will investigate a mishap during today's SpaceX Starship launch after the rocket and booster broke apart on re-entry. But NASA and SpaceX say there were many successes in today's flight, and it comes as the newest class of astronauts prepares to one day ride the rocket to the moon. Here's Tom Costello.
On its 3rd test flight, the biggest rocket ever built flew farther and faster than ever before.
Hot staging confirmed.
Starship performing critical tests and sending back stunning images, breaking apart 45 minutes into flight on re-entry. The SpaceX flight comes as 12 new astronauts earned their wings, with NASA preparing for some very big missions ahead.
Hopefully some of these men and women you see on stage set their footprints on the moon.
Artemis II Commander Reed Weissman will lead the crew that loops around the moon in 2025. By the end of the decade, future astronauts will use Starship to land on the moon. New astronaut Dr. Chris Williams. Have you dreamed of being among the first to return to the moon?
I absolutely hope it's me, and that I get the chance to do that.
Under Artemis, an Orion space capsule will carry astronauts to a new space station called Gateway, already under construction. This is Gateway, the space station that will eventually orbit the moon. On board, 4 of these modules will host 4 crew members working and living on the station, and sending astronauts from here down to the lunar surface. A sort of floating mothership.
Eventually, all 4 will go down, and then they'll come back and forth from here to get ready to go down the surface or return home.
Perhaps one day, Starship will carry astronauts even further. Air Force fighter pilot and new astronaut Nicole Ayers.
As a little kid, I used to be the first person on Mars. So even as a little child, I had the Mars idea for the dream.
Do you still?
Of course, definitely.
But before Mars, the moon is calling. Tom Costello, NBC News, Houston.
It's all very exciting. That's Nightly News for this Thursday. Thank you for watching, everyone. I'm Lester Holt. Please take care of yourself and each other. Good night. Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.
Tonight, cross-country weather threats, tens of millions of have been storm from the west to the south, the so-called gorilla hail and tornadoes. Plus, I still in Colorado, we people stranded outside. Oh, yes, right. You know, I can't see any news right now. 89 more thank you for being with us. We get 40 million Americans under threat from two major storm systems. Heavy snow is falling across Hawaii with 3 feet already on causing travel nightmares at the airport and roads. Hundreds of flights and international airport canceled today, and more severe endangered weather sweeping across the middle of the country today. Several tornadoes touching Kentucky, Indiana. This one caused a small town in Kentucky. Communities are surveying aftermath of down trees and severely damaged homes and businesses. That same system is in the east, going downstate under severe weather tonight from Dallas, Indianapolis, thunderstorms, Indiana, and more tornadoes in the forecast. CSA Dave McCall, tonight, performing life storms.
Tonight, the severe weather threat keeps growing in the Midwest with multiple tornadoes touching down in Indiana and Hanover. Tornado ripped through homes, causing roof collapse, knocking down trees and power lines. Massive another tornado crossed the Ohio River. Video shows debris spinning in the air. Northern Kentucky, at least 100 structures were damaged after tornado touchdown. Last night, a supercell thunderstorm spotted a tornado and severe weather moved through all the Kansas. Hail batter across northern Kansas, some hail clearing all falls. Colorado, weather-breaking snowfall is a problem.
Last night, some parts of the state got 20 inches of snow. Now, try to get out of all this, especially if you rarely see snow with this.
As there's winter conditions created nightmare in Colorado Springs, leaving some riders trapped. People stop on highways like I-75 at standstill, leaving major closures west Denver.
I can see.
Or by cancel, prevent parking up your steamboat. Before people says in, you let them stay here.
The snow also causing more than 800 flight cancellations at Denver International Airport.
I was crying all day today because I wanted to go home and I can't.
At this blustery exit in Golden, Colorado, there are hundreds of people from all over the country who are just simply stuck here. And all of this snow, every single last lick of it has fallen since 10 p.m. last night.
Wow, Dave, thank you so much. For now, that was severe weather next news. Just warning from partners.
Good evening, North. Big Dutch, it's still snowing in Colorado. With this mirroring system, still more field snow, impossible higher elevations. The big weather tracking is a severe weather threat that has been hitting out very large scale tornadoes possible with damaging wind threat also going through the overnight hours. Tomorrow the threat shifts now to the south. We'll watch these storms roll through during the daylight hours and then in the evening. The south storm now starting to pick up. And Texas going to the overnight hours. This front is also bringing some heavy rain that's going to stall out with more potential for flash flooding right in the weekend.
That's what I do. There's breaking news from during a jury in manslaughter trial of James Crumley, who sunk before students in school shooting. There's a courthouse in CBS is under 50 years.
The jury brings Crumley's case delivery for only 10 hours before finding guilty on all 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter. Crumley, the father of Oxford high school cheerleader Crumley, killed 4 classmates in 2021. Last month, James' wife was also committed the same charge for her role in that shooting. A police prosecutor said James Crumley committed the attack, saying he feels property security and son and didn't tell school officials he had access to one, but alleged Crumley behavior in school. Prosecutors also accused Crumley of his son in the middle of heated. Tuesday, first cheerleader treated on the road for massacre, saying I access to the animal, fully committed to this act. So yeah, most of the person like and then people have about Monday to live. Guilty of the attack was massive, been taken near Justin Chilling and has been Today, the same jury appeared for cases.
Another thing, mothers and fathers standing for the right not to be. It has taken unwavering courage. I will forever remain in awe of their strength and prisoners that they have shown in the last 2.5 years. This verdict does not bring back their children, but it does mark the moment of accountability.
On the CBS News, Congress.
Our political review comes from shoppers in Washington to tell you the top Democrat innocent and the highest ranking Jewish elected official is slamming Israel Prime Minister calling for new elections to replace Benjamin Netanyahu. See this from the restructuring rate facing backlash on his central speech.
Nearly half a year into the war between Israel and Hamas. Majority leader Chuck Schumer, Congress's Justice, supports Israel and Governor President of Israel.
Prime Minister Netanyahu has lost his way.
Yeah, 4 minutes ago, said more Schumer called for election than new Israeli leadership.
He is too willing to tolerate the civilian telling Gaza, which is pushing support for Israel worldwide to historic lows.
Schumer worked on the growing concerns of Democrats and Democratic voters that Israel's aggressive response to 90% attack by Hamas. And Netanyahu resistance more than area Gaza, more than 31,000 Palestinians in Gaza, them point the fan. President Biden voiced some frustration with Netanyahu, who never called to replace him. White House officials who knew advance what Schumer would say expressed deep concern that Israel plans to conduct a ground invasion. It's the city of Israel ambassador to the U.S. also responded unhelpful. Israel is a solid democracy.
This is not only highly inappropriate, it's just plain wrong.
While the Russian last Schumer for undermining U.S. ally.
It is grotesque and hypocritical for Americans who propagate foreign interference in our own democracy to call for the removal of democratically elected leader Israel.
Tonight, still uncertainty about fake hostages being held in Gaza, including 5 Americans. Prime Minister Netanyahu rejected a ceasefire proposal from Hamas, arguing based on unrealistic demands. North.
Thank you very much. Vice President Kamala Harris today, first Vice President War President President Biden campaign hopes that reproductive rights from cycle and voting voters to the polls. CSN supports Minnesota. The reports of your history again. But the first president history with a half-hour private tour of the spot. A planned care clinic is a quote. The reason I'm here is because of the healthcare crisis. The clinic has seen a 25% surgery abortion since 2 neighboring states, along with several others, and active full abortion bans. And Dr. Stressor is the chief medical officer. Our new abortion mandate is difficult. It is dangerous. It is putting my patients and healthcare providers at severe risk. This was the last stop for the VP. 6 swing has been solely focused on reproductive rights. These extremists, they're trying to take me back to 1800s. We must restore the protections of Roe. The issue is a top focus for the Biden campaign, and here's why. 57% of Americans say overturning Roe v. Wade nearly 2 years ago was mostly bad for the country. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. Is this the most damning issue for Democrats in the state right now?
Well, here's one. I think people are passionate about people very number. I think the end of the day is one of the most personal, most threatening, and it's one
Donald Trump will attend a hearing in his classified documents today has particularly declined to say he passed the 15-week national abortion ban favored by some Republicans. We got some real news today, and no one of 4 criminal cases Trump is currently facing. The Manhattan DA offered a 30-day delay, and the trial was supposed to get underway in just a couple of weeks. Now, this case has to do with hush money payments that were allegedly made for the Golden Star Stormy Daniels. The defense wants 90 days to review tens of thousands of pages of new documents that were just handed over to them. Tonight, a number of new developments in what being called the biggest cybersecurity attack on America's healthcare system. The Department of Health and Human Services is now investigating United Health Group had a shut down companies payment processing arm. Previously, funding is not online, but many providers are still struggling. See the full neighborhoods. A ransomware attack turns national crisis.
It's one of the most stressful things to do on practice, and that's saying something given about COVID.
And doctors like Christine Meyer, a personal nightmare. On an average weekday, you would get
20, 30, 40, 50,000 dollars a month, and they got 77.
That targeted change healthcare, even if United Health, forcing the nation's largest medical payment system offline on February 21st, leaving hospitals and medical practices in cash crunch.
To find yourself suddenly, looking at our home and value and can we up to pay our employees. This is a terrible feeling.
White House officials tracking down on United Health Tuesday. AHS Secretary Javier Becerra demanding the company front hospitals and doctors more emergency funds. How are you holding accountable?
We will actually work with a clearinghouse change operation. They can't provide payment for services that our agency.
Dr. Meyer says it's not just a payroll problem, it's a patient problem.
I'm most worried about having to reduce our hours. Patients that can't hear their routine things there. So folks, the cost, their electric tax, bring them up.
Potentially land engagements in emergency rooms. What is preventing another ransomware incident like this from happening more?
Everybody has the answer, but what do you do to try to start? And what do you do to try to target? I would go down before we cliff.
Concerns about potential patient data breach have also prompted at least 6 class action lawsuits. United Health considered a statement that it's committed to providing relief to patients and practices affected. This is a big deal. Thank you so much. We'll take TikTok to fighting back after the hospital calling for it to be banned in the US, like cut ties with China. The Senate is now reviewing litigation. CSN takes a look at what's next for the world's most popular app. This is not what we want. The fight over the future of TikTok is bringing out influencers and determined CEO. Today on Capitol Hill, TikTok CEO will fight meetings and meet up with police. He's reportedly attempting to stop possible ban after House Bill on Wednesday that will mandate TikTok separate from Chinese currently. It would have self-US violation ban. Today, former Treasury Secretary and Health Administration Stephen Mnuchin says he wants to fight.
I understand that validation, so this is a complicated with the you're trying to say I'm by US businesses.
But that may not be possible.
Let's say all these things come together and say all its voice. Then the government can very well stop it. It's unclear if the algorithm is something that can be exported to another country.
If TikTok is banned,
it would work as the option updated, it would be stores, and it would be time.
It's not just a topic, this is not a business.
Meanwhile, company CEO has made every option.
We do all we can, including exercising your rights. The fact is a meeting platform, we will build with you.
And Joe Hampton does now. There's so much to talk about. This is so much that we have now. No, I thought you were going to schedule an event vote, and if the bill passes, then he will fight. And if China is going to sell, people are selling Starbucks or Lockheed Martin or Shopify. TikTok is reportedly currently valued at about $100 billion. Just about Joe Hampton. A 14-year-old girl nearly kidnapped on her way home from school while police are raising, but she did. That's next. Terrifying video shows a 14-year-old girl escaping from kidnapping while walking home from school last week. Police in Glendale, Arizona say SUV stopped and a 20-year-old went out and started following her. While the girl sensed something was wrong and ran away. She got no man walking the dog, helped her, and then was arrested the next day. He was already on probation for similar crimes. Police are praising the girl from wherever surroundings and doing exactly what she should. People living in Rockville, Maryland, just north of DC, had to close their windows on Sunday because of thick black smoke from a waiting fire and asphalt quarry. There's 2 tanks of liquid asphalt and another pulling used motor oil airplanes. So DC for miles of that. The cause of the fire is an investigation. The world's most powerful rocket breaks apart into the Earth. Why SpaceX is calling this historic test flight a success? Next. SpaceX's massive new Starship blast off Texas today. Didn't know exactly planned, but CNN's Chris Tingley explains why SpaceX considers the test a giant leap forward.
The most powerful rocket ever built blasted off this morning. New SpaceX third test is one of its 397-foot tall,
Starship rocket. Technology crucial to NASA's move. The previous 2 launches ended in dramatic explosions. This time, rockets 39 powered Starship safely into space.
Hey, we got Starship on space. This is early. Go.
But not everything in the plan. Williams had to use dramatic energy for re-entry, even more than 500 degrees. Starship reports.
We are making a call now. We have lost 28.
The rocket booster also lost control of the satellite body control the descent support.
These Starship are the space at the beginning, deploying all that huge force.
TK2 space analyst, Bill Hardware.
They're trying to use no one has ever used it. The fact they lost the Starship on the entry. I don't see that they pay for this. I figured out how to stay down the road.
A step closer to the moon, with many more still ahead. Perspective CBS News, Los Angeles.
America is now a new class for New York space. On each night, America meet the newest members of New York's latest. Nearly 300 FBI firefighters drive this join the nation's largest fire department. The probationary firefighters, known as Probies, were filled with pride in their commitment to keeping New York safe. Among the drivers is Jerome Edgar, whose father was the chef in the newest tower of the World Trade Center.
My father got on, so was it just because our was high enough, and those people that I don't want to be like them, and that's how people love.
New class also includes 10 women, 34 drivers, after graduates, people of color, the continues to rule the city and protest. So congratulations and thank you to the newest members of the FDNY tonight's of America. And that's tonight's news. I'm Robert Hall.
Thank you for watching and privilege of your time. This is Amish Shakeen 5858. I am Ahmed Goodnam. Have a good life.